Welcome to the training room, providing you with the resources you need to step your game up. My name's Dan Himmelstein, brain coach at Premier Esports Academy, and today I'll be providing you with some facts about how emotions affect your performance, ways to combat negative or adverse emotions, and then ways to use your emotions to your advantage while developing your skills and performing at a high level. Now, emotions are present in any performance, and esports are no different. Emotions can either positively contribute to a player's success or be a detriment to performance. Emotions have a direct effect on attention, decision-making capabilities, and overall enjoyment. So it's important for players to be able to identify and manage both the positive and the negative emotions that are associated with performance. Now, there's really two ways to go about this, and I'll go over both. Now, the first way we can go about managing our emotions is to not let those emotions dictate our behavior. Changing a behavior is typically much easier than changing a thought, feeling, or emotion because we have little control over these processes. Think raise your right hand versus don't let this next scrim upset you. Raising your right hand is obviously much easier off the bat just because it's something we have absolute control over. Raise your right hand. Now, this can be a little bit confusing, so I'll give you guys an example. Think about a time, or the first time you'd ever been on a roller coaster. It's pretty likely that you were experiencing the emotion of being scared, nervous, anxious. Now, everyone goes through this, yet you decided to carry on anyway. This is a perfect example of a time where you didn't let your current emotional state dictate your behavior. Now, we can go on to then say, I'm feeling anxious, but I'm gonna still go on and play well, or still go on and play confidently. Confident being that behavior that we're looking for, that desirable behavior. Or we can take an approach that aims to change the thoughts that lead to that adverse emotional response. Now, let's use tilting, for example. Tilt is something that every esports player has either experienced themselves or have seen others display. And it's really the product of mismanaged emotion and frustration, usually stemming from one's own poor play, a teammate's mistake, or the player just simply not achieving their own goals. I could talk about tilt all day, but I had a great opportunity to chat about this topic with former League of Legends pro and now professional streamer, Shifter.
I'm Danny Lee. You may know me as Shifter. I played League of Legends professionally for about 4 or 5 years, and now I'm a Twitch streamer.
Very cool, man. And who do you play for now?
I don't play professionally anymore. I just stream.
Cool.
But I guess most notably, I guess we did the whole Delta Fox thing with Cutie, Dowers, and stuff in the Challenger series.
Gotcha. Cool. So let's get right into it. What does tilting look like for you?
Tilting for me is just, I guess the easiest way to put it is when you aren't thinking clearly or aren't playing how you normally would, which is I guess how the phrase tilting came from. You usually play it, if this is you being calm, you're a straight line, and when you divert from that path is tilting. So you're not playing how you normally would, you're not calm, and yeah, just not thinking clearly.
Gotcha. And what does that normally result from?
It definitely varies from person to person. Maybe some person did a bad play and that just affected you mentally, you don't want to play anymore, or it affected you, it screwed up your lane, or it screwed up how the game was playing out for you. So it definitely could be a lot of things. It could be external or internal.
Yeah, very, very good point there, actually, the external or internal causes. Cool. So how do you prevent yourself from tilting?
To prevent myself from tilting, I think it's mostly just perspective, how you see the situation. So let's say, someone is playing and he screws up your lane. Maybe he gives your lane opponent a free kill or something like that. A lot of people who do tilt will be like, okay, this guy just gave my lane a free kill. They'll just write off like that. This guy's bad, my teammate's bad, something like that. But I'm obviously if you perceive it the other way, maybe you could have done something better to prevent that from happening. Maybe if you did something different, your teammate maybe would have survived that situation instead. So I think it's just about how you see the situation, and if you can see it, to just look to improve yourself rather than how the situation is. I think you can get out of tilting in a lot of ways.
Gosh, well, that kind of starts to answer the next question. How do you recover from tilt if you find yourself starting to tilt?
I mean, for me, I've
Golden
been
question, right?
right. I've been playing for a long time, and my answer is different. I actually just go grab a snack, get some sugar in me or something like that. That's how I untilt. But I think the best way for the general public to untilt would probably just to take a break, take a breather, get out of that zone they've kind of dug themselves into, that like clouded mindedness of what just happened, and just start from a clean slate.
Yeah. What about when you're actually like in a game during a competition or something and you find yourself tilting?
I think it's kind of the same thing. You just take a step back and okay, something bad really happened. Well, what can you do to salvage that situation? You just have to think about what's next, what's next. Don't delve in the past, because I mean it's not going to do anything for you. It's just look forward.
Right. Absolutely. Cool. So, I guess my next question would be, was there ever a time where you felt that you actually played better while you were on tilt? And if so, why?
Definitely yes. Like a lot of times, when I tilt, I tend to get like angry. I get a little pissed off, and when I get pissed off, I always want to make like a ballsy plays. I always play on the razor's edge, so I'm always like, okay, I want to kill this guy. I'm mad obviously, but I'm so focused on doing that objective or my goal that I do that goal really well. But the reason why it's not good is because you're so focused on that goal that you're forgetting about everything else. But in that regard, you do play better to focus on that goal.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So, my last question is going to be, are there any other emotions that heavily play a factor or play into your performance?
Um, I think any emotion can. I think the way you play will reflect on how you're feeling at the time. Because if you are playing very focused, very calm, how you normally would, I think your play will reflect that. If you're messing up a lot, that just shows, maybe you're not confident in your play. Maybe, I mean, obviously we're playing a game, so you can't see, what's going on with the person's like facial expressions a lot of the time. But maybe they're just having a rough day or something like that. They're kind of down in the dumps, and if they're not playing optimally, everything factors in. I wouldn't say it's just like one emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. One of the things that I always say is any emotion can be seen in excess and can drastically affect your performance. So you got to make sure to kind of monitor all the emotions, a wider range of emotions, and just not the sad or the unhappy. Sometimes it's overzealous, over happy, overexcited, and those types of things. So that's a great point you make. Now, positive self-talk is taking a proactive approach to managing emotion. Positive self-talk can directly combat falling into a state of tilt. It's meant to influence a particular mood instead of reacting to an adverse emotion. Now, some statements that we can use to really boost our confidence and put us in that positive mood are, I've earned this spot in the playoffs. I've worked on my op skills to get here. I can make it to Challenger this season. Things of that nature that are really going to reflect on the hard work that you've put in up to this point. And just to reiterate, this can be used at any time. It could be when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, before an important match, before a practice session. These are all great times to use positive self-talk, and it's something that you always have in your pocket. A more reactive approach to managing emotions would be using keywords during practice and performance. Words like calm and focus can be very useful when things get hectic. Make sure that you set up a plan and have some consistency with the keywords that you use. That way, you're not fumbling and shuffling for a direction to go. Once you say, hey, it's time to use that keyword, you know exactly what you need to do. This can be especially useful when presented with adverse conditions. So let's say you have to reverse sweep your opponent, or you're getting snowballed in lane, or maybe you lost a pistol round in CSGO. We have to figure out a way to come back and play forward and move on from this mistake or adverse condition. I like to fully imagine the words spelled out almost as vividly as I can in my mind when I'm playing. This helps break the attention off of the adverse conditions and helps me direct myself and embody the behaviors that I have associated with my keywords. And it gives me direction to continue and then recover from what might have been an adverse situation, or almost we can almost say an emotional breakdown in game. So using these keywords on a consistent basis will not only give us direction, but it'll also help us recover from mistakes faster. Thought stopping is also a reactive approach to managing emotions, and it's very closely related to the previous two techniques. Thought stopping is useful for when our thoughts are leading or causing negative emotions. We're our own biggest critics, and this happens in patterns. We have a tendency to beat ourselves up, and without a bouncing board or someone to respond to us, we end up just internalizing those feelings. We're much more likely to offer support to a friend when they come up to us and say, "Hey, I suck," than offering support to ourselves when we have this thought or we have this feeling. So we have to start recognizing when we're being too harsh of critics and be able to reframe that phrase, much like we would if a friend were to come up to us and say something similar. So if a friend were to come up to us and say, "Hey, I suck, I am just no good," it's pretty likely I'm gonna respond and say "Well, no, you do these things great, you do that great, maybe you had a bad game." Now, we need to figure out a way to do this for ourselves. We need to have a plan for this. We need to make sure that we recognize these patterns of negative self-talk that we end up falling into and come back and pretend like we're our own friend. We can offer our own support and do that same similar type of reframing and say, "Hey, no, Dan, you don't suck. You made a mistake here. This is what you need to do to improve," and move on from it. So before we wrap this all up, there's a couple really important things to note, and the first is that some players may actually feel that they play better while they're on tilt. And this might be true, however, it's important to realize that they're probably displaying certain aspects of tilt and removing the negative consequences of tilt. So for example, they could be displaying an increase in aggression, concentration, and effort. Now, although tilt is extremely common, it's not the only form of mismanaged emotion in esports. It's important to realize that any form of emotion can be seen in excess. So we have to be really, really careful to evaluate and assess our emotions, whether they be positive or negative, and see if there's anything that's really getting in the way of successful performances when it comes to our emotion. So to get this video wrapped up, one of the key takeaway points from this whole presentation is going to be that there's a number of ways to manage and regulate our emotions and get the most out of them. So it's super important for players, coaches, and anyone else involved to start recognizing how they feel before, during, and after performances. That way they can try and replicate their best ones. Now, I don't know who's been keeping up, but last week there was an article on the growth mindset, and I provided you guys with a sample journal entry in a downloadable form. Now, this is going to be a great place to adapt the emotional regulation piece that we went over today. And I'll provide you guys with another sample journal entry where the emotional regulation piece is added in. So you want to start keeping track of these things. That way we can start to pick up on patterns and know how and when we're going to play our best. And this is a tool that not everyone out there has. So it's giving you guys a major advantage against other players and opponents that you're going to know how to get yourself in the right emotional state to play your best. So, I really want to drive this point home. The whole idea of this is to not let your emotions ruin an event or ruin a tournament or ruin a competition. We want to be able to look back at our experience in esports in a really positive light and of really making sure that we really enjoyed our time spent playing and competing. So getting control over these emotions, really learning how to adjust and how to adapt in the moment is going to be a major step towards that direction. So with that, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time.